Hey everyone, welcome to my 2019 Inktober tour. I'm going to take you through all 32 illustrations that I did. I did one before Inktober even started that I'm kind of including, and that's this one. This one is called Entwined. These two characters here are sisters, and I really wanted to show in the illustration how close they are and how much their lives are entwined with one another. They have kind of complementary powers to one another, and they work together in pretty much everything they do in life. They've lived together forever, and I feel like I was able to capture the sisterly closeness that I wanted to between the two of them. I used mostly washes to tone this piece, but I was starting to bring in a little bit of the dry brushing that you're going to see a lot of. I ended up using a combination of washes and dry brushing to paint a lot of these characters that are all supposed to be black. They're the blackbird creatures. In this day one piece, we have Atono, the blackbird lion, and here I was using mostly washes to try to create the effects of really slick black fur and feathers. I didn't experiment with much dry brushing in this one. This one is pretty much pure washes, so I was trying to layer the washes in a way that it would look shiny, and I was trying to leave myself white spaces that I could then wash over to create the effect of highlights kind of moving in and out of different areas and showing the muscle shapes with the highlights and shadows. In this day two piece, I brought in dry brushing. So here I'm combining dry brushing with washes. I did some dry brushing ink first, and I was mostly trying to get like the really dark areas dry brushed in. And then after kind of creating the whole dry brush base, I brought washes in on top. And I feel like that was really successful for getting the fur to look like dark and black, but still feel very, very rendered and detailed. And ink was a good medium for that, turns out. This here is day 3, and in this one I focused on getting that lantern to really look like it was glowing, which proved to be kind of a unique challenge. You know, it involved a lot of thinking ahead. I had to leave the area that I wanted lit, I had to leave that untouched mostly, you know, and paint the shadow areas in first. It involved a lot of thinking about like where light would hit and how I can create that glowing effect. This day 4 piece is one of my favorites. I had an original sketch for this that I ended up dumping because I didn't think it was good enough and I was feeling kind of down about myself, so I tried to really challenge myself to come up with something better, and I feel like I was successful in that challenge. I really feel like this drawing ended up being like a lot stronger than what I originally had, which I will throw up right here. And I feel like I learned a lot from the process of trying to strengthen that concept. I really thought ahead about how I could layer the different elements of the piece to create depth, and I'm super happy with how it came out. This one was my first chance of like giving myself a little bit of a day off. It was a little bit of a simpler piece. I don't have too much to say about it. I feel like I just wanted to paint a bird, and I was happy with the bird. So in this piece we have Alva and Edna again, but this time as babies, and it was me trying to challenge myself even further of creating that lantern glow. So figuring out ways that I could create like really dark black shadows and then have the feeling of a really bright light glowing from in the middle of them there. One of the techniques that I think ended up working really well for me here was I actually used dry brushing to kind of create the effect of shadow forms rolling over on 3D form, and I think that really worked well. So this was me experimenting with trying to create something a little bit simpler and thinking of what if I went the other direction? What if rather than trying to render every little piece of hair, I created something that would be easier to use in, say, a comic, like a simpler character design that was a little bit more flat, but that I could kind of emphasize the line art and like the graphic forms. So with that direction in mind, I ended up going for really simple shadow shapes and just a really strong kind of pose and posture. And then I ended up trying to bring in that little bit of extra detail with the highlights. And that ended up being really fun and I think really successful. And I think that if I take this project further, this is definitely a style that I might pursue because it takes a lot less time than the super rendered dry brushing style. Here's another kind of simple one that I did for day 8. I wanted to every couple days give myself a bit of a break and just do something that was a little bit easier for me and not too complicated. And then I could jump in on the next day with something that was a little bit more involved, like this one, which is like, you know, a character in motion. So this one for day 9 is a little fox playing in lanterns. And I combined washes with really softly laid on dry brush to create hopefully the effect of some really soft fur. I think it's an interesting technique. I also had a lot of fun designing the lanterns for this one and like playing with different shapes of lanterns. And that was a good time. I didn't get perfect circles for some of them, which probably bothers me more than it bothers other people. But yeah, I struggled so much in Inktober with keeping, you know, I drew so many lanterns, and then when I was lining them, sometimes the circles would come out just like a little bit, not circular, and then it would bother me a lot. But, you know, it is what it is. Ink is very final. So this one was one of my most involved pieces. This one is almost fully dry brush. So this is like me taking the same character, Atono the Blackbird Lion, in like the complete opposite direction of that simple piece. This was me like taking the dry brushing and the rendering to the extreme and seeing how far I could push it that way. And it definitely took a long time. Like I think on average these took me about 2 hours, like between an hour and 45 minutes and 2 hours ish. This one took me like 3.5 hours, I think, somewhere in that realm. I did it when I was over at my friend's house and we were also like hanging out and talking. So, you know, that might have slowed me down a little bit, but it definitely took a long time. But that said, like I'm really happy with how it came out. I feel like I pushed my rendering ability with ink kind of to the maximum here, and hopefully I will push it even farther in the future. Alright, these two are fan favorites from last year and I had to do them again. I really love the design of these two. They're so easy to make look nice in ink just because I can overlay that white wolf pup on top of like the pitch black of her mom's fur and create this really nice silhouette. Ink does so well when you can use contrast and like tonal contrast between two characters to create two silhouettes. Like when you can create like a dark exterior silhouette and a light interior silhouette, that for me is just like recipe for success because it creates so much clarity, and I'm able to, just with like the way that I design these characters, create a lot of different situations where I can make that exact kind of contrast happen with like relative ease. And so these two are some of my favorites to paint just because I think it comes really naturally to me and I like the results. Alright, we're up to day 12 now. This is the furious blackbird fox in Rye. And she's battling two blackbirds. And I really wanted to create something that looked very designed and controlled and like kind of iconic, but that still had all of like the energy and motion of something that felt more like a scene. Because I feel like a lot of my ink drawings kind of fall into one of two categories, or I guess like ink drawings in general. You know, like I either go in the direction of making them feel like they're, you know, part of a scene, like the Fire Dogs one, that would be a really good example of that. Or I go in the direction of making them feel very designed, and people like to use them as tattoo designs. And this was kind of me trying to meet in the middle a little bit. This one, I was super happy with how this one came out. This one I was again kind of going in the very rendered direction with the wolves. That's Alva and Edna again. I know the characters look pretty different from time to time when you see them. A lot of this was like me experimenting with different ways that I could create them, you know, using different ink textures. But I was really happy with the combination of the rendered elements here that I added with a more very like 2D looking character, I feel like it created a really pleasing result that I was quite happy with, and I would definitely do more in this style again. I also really like how like large and bulky the wolves feel next to him. This one was another kind of simpler one. This is a character that I have drawn a lot, and I really enjoyed the kind of lily pad mushroom growths coming off of this character. They're always really fun to draw. I often draw this character in the rain because I like raindrops kind of rolling off of them and down its fur. And yeah, just a little simple one. This one was a concept that I kind of like, the inspiration for it just struck me, and then I was like, oh my god, I have to do this. And I went and got my skull, my deer skull, and shot some reference for this, and then immediately got to work. Sometimes it takes me a long time to figure out what I want to draw in the morning. Other times it's like, bam, I want to do this. And that was one of those lucky mornings where it was like, this is what I want to do. And I'm super happy with how this one came out. I really like the dry brushed ink on the cape, and also the pose felt like a lot of fun. It felt pretty engaging. Yeah, I think this is one of my favorites from the year. I think that the combination of washes and then the dry brushing on the cape was also like a nice contrast that I want to play around with more, using both washes and dry brushing kind of right next to each other. After that one, I got really busy. I was having kind of a rough time at work and with everything that was going on, and I didn't end up being super happy with this piece. It felt like I could have done like a much more engaging image with this type of a pose and the elements that were like happening in it, but I was still like, at least somewhat satisfied with it, so you just gotta move on sometimes. This one I got my boyfriend to model for, and I think this was a really cool exploration of like what human characters could look like in this world and this story, because there are both like creature and human characters, and I think finding a style that suits both of them was an interesting challenge for me. In this one, I have Mor and Awer, the wolf mother and wolf daughter, coming back in again. This time in a little bit of a sad one. The myth that I've built in this world is that the little baby is killed, and her mother finds her body and asks the god of the land, Erhan, to bring her child back to life. And Erhan says, I can't do that, but I can take you to where she is, which is this middle space. It's she hasn't passed on yet. She's still lingering here. And the mother is like, yes, please take me. I'll do it. And Erhan is so moved by her willingness to do that he lets her traverse between our world and that middle ground. So she meets her daughter in that liminal space, and then she also walks the earth. And that's a story that I came up with for those two. Here's another simpler one. I also wasn't super happy with this one, so we'll just move forward. Sometimes you like what you come up with, other times you don't, and that's okay. This one I was like 80% happy with. I feel like I like the idea behind it a lot, and I think I could have executed it better. So that's, kind of an interesting thing. Like I feel like my execution was just like not exactly what I wanted it to be, but I'm still relatively happy with it. And then another kind of simpler one, and this time we're kind of I was like getting really busy and a little bit stressed out, so I shot less videos. And I feel like it's important to talk about how like sometimes I was like really stressed out, but I was like giving myself the chance to just do something simpler and move on, and like not need to challenge myself every day. All right. I came out of that time of feeling like things weren't going well to this one, which I feel like was just like my biggest success of this whole month. I just feel like I captured the feeling that I wanted to. I called this one The Bond, and I wanted to show the bond between the undead plant creatures that the Blackbird children create and, you know, the children that make them, this kind of connection that they have. And I feel like, I feel just really happy with this. I feel like it shows the emotion that I wanted it to, and for me, like, the story and the emotion is like the most important part. I actually ended up making this one the collection cover, the cover of the book, because I immediately envisioned how I could kind of place the title and the name on it, and yeah, super thrilled with that one. This is another one that I was actually super happy with. This one's called The First Child, and it's a Moria and a Tono just kind of looking up at the sky together. And I combined some of the things that I was practicing early on in the month, like creating glow from a lantern. I used kind of a wet on wet effect to do that here for the first time, with some of the dry brushing and then a lot of washes. Like, I feel like here a lot of the techniques that I was practicing all throughout the month kind of came together for me. One thing that I think worked really well in this piece was the dry brushing over top of washes on the mane and the face of the character, and then like how that separates from the very clean washes on the little girl, and like the contrast between the two I think works really well. Here is a piece of Amoria grown up, and I had so much fun working on this one. I just feel like there were so many different like textures and colors, and it was just this like really fun scene, and I enjoyed drawing painstakingly every leaf. I really like drawing plants, even though doing it traditionally in ink involves a lot of little leaves. I still had a really good time with this one. I enjoyed it a lot. From when I first started exploring themes of lanterns, I had this idea in my head of a reindeer with lanterns hanging from its horns. I just felt like it would be such a fun kind of wintry scene to paint, and I definitely want to do more with this concept because I could see a full painting with a reindeer with the lanterns hanging from the antlers, lighting up a whole kind of snowy landscape. I think it's just a really kind of calm and serene concept. Here are two more characters again. They're both descendants of the toxin god. This is the same leopard that we saw earlier. They're two brothers, and despite one being undead and one being alive, they still love each other. And I kind of wanted to show that continued connection between the two of them, despite being in two completely different, paths of life, one being in the first life cycle and then the other being in the second undead life cycle. Here's one that I think was like in the middle of being successful, and then like also has some elements that I want to push further. Like, it has a lot of things going on that I like. I feel like it really feels like a warm, inviting scene. But then I also feel like there were certain elements that I want to like practice more and push further in the future. I feel like this one came out feeling really cozy, and I really liked that it made the characters look like they're close to one another and like comfortable with each other, and I was really happy with that. I also feel like at this point in the month I was getting to a place where I was really getting happy with how the rendering of the black fur was coming out. I feel like in that one, and then also in this one, they just feel really solid, and they feel like they're rendered but not too rendered. So I was super happy with where I got to the end of the month. We're definitely getting more toward the end here, and drawing to the close of the last final illustrations. This one, I got the idea for this at work, and I sketched this out on my lunch break just because I saw it so clearly, and it felt like a really cool kind of designy one that would be a pretty cool tattoo design, and those are kind of fun to do from time to time. Here was one that I really wanted to feel more involved and deep and just kind of draw you into the piece. And I like the way that that came out. I feel like those elements work really well in it. It feels engaging, like the lion's looking right at you and just kind of calling you in deeper, and I like that aspect of it. All right, that last one was actually the last of the month. Technically, we are now past Inktober. I forgot about these. I had just one little extra one here that I kind of tacked on at the end. I didn't like it quite enough to have it be my last day, but I did like it enough to show it in this video. So here is a little comparison of one that I did in the month before Inktober started, and then one that I did toward the end of Inktober. And I feel like these two just kind of illustrate the things that I feel like I improved on. I feel like I really improved kind of like my gesture and posing of the characters, and then also just I feel like they feel more like real and fluid toward the end of the month than the beginning. In the beginning, I feel like they feel a lot more stiff. And the shading and everything felt a lot flatter, and I feel like I kind of strengthened my rendering skills, my ability to render with ink over the course of the month, so super happy with that. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments which of these is your favorite, and also if there's stuff that you would want to learn about ink from me, let me know. I want to make more videos about ink. I got super into ink at the end of 2018 when I did the Inktober challenge for the first time, and I'm still very into ink. I think it's such a fun medium, and I just got really obsessed with it, and I would love to make more videos if there's topics that you want me to cover. So yeah, thanks so much for watching and for following along. I'll see you guys next time.